Welcome to the Delight in the Limelight show. I'm your host, Linda Ugolo. Thanks for coming on and watching the replay. I'm a speaking confidence coach and author of the book, Delight in the Limelight. I'm here to help you transform your experience of speaking from dread to delight, whether it's on stage, on camera, in the media or the meeting room. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about how to help leaders make it safe and worth it for people to speak up. And here to help me and you feel inspired and know exactly what to do is Stephen Shedletsky.
It's
Welcome to
great
the
to be here.
show.
Thank you,
So
Linda.
you got to keep your eyes out because Shed, as you are known to your friends, has a book
Mhm.
coming out, The Speak Up Culture. When leaders truly listen, people step up. And it's coming out in October. And I think we should all get it.
Fine. I'm okay with that.
You're okay with that?
I'm okay with that. Yes, Linda. Thank you.
So it's really fun because we met online. You had a post about safety at work, and I like jumped on it because I'm like, yes, we gotta make it safer for people to speak up. And so I want to start with what's going on right now. What's the bad news? What are people doing that it's unintentional?
And like as it relates to inhibiting people from speaking up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, what I've learned about leadership is leaders own their impact, whether it's intended or not. And sometimes leaders have an unintended impact, but it's still their impact. And the more senior one gets in an organization, your whispers become a shout and your tiptoes become stomps. So, first and foremost, let's get some definitions out of the way. The way I define a speak up culture is an environment in which people feel it is both safe and worth it, as you mentioned, to share ideas, share opinions, share concerns, even if they're unpopular or personal, disagree or dissent, especially with those more senior to us, and even admit mistake, believing it will lead to improvement and not being ignored and not being punished. And so there's a virtuous cycle of, safe and worth it. But the virtuous cycle is encourage and reward. So encourage, in our relationships with our bosses, with our colleagues, with those more senior to us, do we feel encouraged that our voice matters, is welcomed, valued, right? And encourage could be, hey, Linda, I really want to hear what you think. And then, right? Remaining silent. Or if I know, so this is now platinum rule stuff rather than golden rule. So platinum rule is treating others as they wish to be treated, not treating others the way you wish to be treated. So even though I'm extroverted and very comfortable being put on the spot for the most part, that doesn't mean everyone is. And so it takes time for me, especially if I'm facilitating a meeting or running a meeting or a leader in a room. How do I flex to the style of what my people need, not just what I need? And then if people are encouraged, are they rewarded? And reward doesn't mean bonus, raise, promotion, statue made in your honor in the lobby of the virtual office or office. Reward means thank you. That must have been hard. I appreciate what you shared. I'm not quite following yet, but I think you're onto something. Can you share more? We didn't implement your idea, but here's why. Keep it coming. Great stuff. Like those are all versions of rewards. So yeah, encourage and reward, and we have to do both.
Yeah, yeah. So I've had clients who have shared with me how their boss will say, hey, I want to get everyone's ideas on what we might do. And then everyone's silent.
Hmm.
And then, like, the new person who doesn't know what's going on, shares stuff. And then they
Yeah.
get punished with,
Hmm.
well, that's a stupid idea.
From the very leader who asked for the ideas. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Tisk.
Yeah, tisk tisk. But so do you think that there's hope for that kind of a person?
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. So that leader is missing some tools, and that leader is missing noticing the impact of their behavior. So one, I see so many leaders walk into a room and say, "Hey, everyone, I need your ideas. We have this issue. Here's what I think we should do." And it's like, no, 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 no. Like you go, here's the issue. Am I missing anything with the issue? Does anyone else see it in a different way? Like, have I synthesized the issue well? You know, do we think we should go into breakout rooms and have a smaller conversation around the issue, or is the definition of the issue fair, right? And then when people push, you can't say, no, you're wrong. That's gaslighting, right? You actually have to create as much of a holistic definition of what the problem is in the first place. And then if you ask for ideas and you get crickets, you have to ask more and ask harder and have more silence, or use breakout rooms, or give yourself feedback, or, on a scale of 0 to 10, how clear am I being? And if you all say 10, I think you're lying. I want to improve. I don't want just a pat on the back,
Is that what
So,
you mean by give yourself feedback? You ask for feedback, like say how, or is it
or
something else?
so that's one. So one is, on a scale of 0 to 10, how clear am I being? Another is, when I was talking about that idea about encourage and reward, I don't know if I was clear enough. I actually think maybe having a visual would help. Is that fair? So I'm giving my at absence of others giving me feedback, I can be critical of myself
Mm.
and then ask, is that fair? And then people might go like, yep, or no, like, oh, tell me more, please. Like, how did you experience that? Right. So that's more what I mean. Um, but yeah, I mean, that leader who asks for ideas, waits for the most junior person or the newest hire to be like, oh, great, and then they're berated, that further establishes this is a shut up culture, not a speak up
It's a sh
culture.
yes, it's a shut up culture, I like that.
Yeah.
So, it's one of the things that came to my mind as I was, like, looking through my notes for this live stream is that a lot of times people already come into a work situation feeling a little inhibited, feeling maybe not really worthy or not sure if their ideas are good enough. And is it enough,
Mm,
do you think,
yeah.
if the environment is safe enough, is that enough? Or do you feel like, I mean, my feeling, I'll just put it right out there,
Yeah.
and I wanna hear what your thoughts are, is that sometimes hearing these kinds of rewards from the outside, the encouragement to speak up and having the space held for you,
Hmm.
can over time allow you to feel like, oh yes, this is safe and I will do it. And then there are perhaps other people that, as much as someone tries to lead you to the watering hole, it just,
Hmm.
you don't trust that it's going to be safe.
Um,
What are your thoughts about that? And to me, then that's the time when you've got to do some of your own inner work.
yeah. So you're making me think of two things, and one is our common friend Leanne Davy, who I believe you had on recently. Is that right?
Yes, yes, that's
Yeah.
correct.
So one is uh, Kim Scott, the author of Radical Candor, has taught me that everything in our life's experience can be boiled down to a 2x2 framework. So I have a 2x2 framework for speaking up. I just posted it, I think yesterday, on LinkedIn, if anyone's interested. So the two uh, axes of a speak up culture is safe and worth it. So obviously we want the upper right quadrant, which is it both feels safe and it both feels worth it. Worth it means when I do take the risk, because it always is a risk to speak up, to relationships, to job, to reputation. But when I do take that risk to speak up, do I feel that it will actually lead to a positive change or impact? The goal is not fearlessness. That's impossible. The goal is to create less fear. In creating less fear, it feels safer that we will be encouraged and rewarded to speak up. But it's really interesting. So obviously, we want high safety, high worth it. We obviously do not want low safety, and low worth it. That would be an unhappy marriage between fear and apathy. I've been there, no fun. I've seen others there, no fun. But then if you have high safety but low impact, interesting. This is, you do feel safe to speak up, but you don't really think it's going to lead to much change. Bureaucracy, red tape, broken systems, giving a good friend feedback on a bad habit but not thinking that habit's going to change. That's all examples of high safety, low impact. And after a while, when you keep going back to that well, you're like, it's dry, like I feel safe to speak up, I'm just not going to anymore because it's a waste of my breath.
Mm.
The other, which is low safety but high impact is really interesting. This is where the stakes are too high that certain people, courageous leaders, feel that they must speak up for the benefit of others. This is where Ed Pearson found himself at the Boeing 737 MAX factory in Renton, Washington, where he saw that the plane being built was not safe and he did not want planes to go down. At personal risk, he spoke up. And you can get whistleblowing in that quadrant as well. So that's just the dynamic. Now, I referenced Leanne Davies' work. Leanne wrote a brilliant article called A Different Take on Psychological Safety on her blog. And there is legitimate psychological danger. Then there is fear of aversive outcomes, and then fear of oneself. So fear of aversive outcomes is I have an idea, but if I share it, I feel like people are going to ask me to prove my work. They're going to ask me to do more work. They're going to push me. And it's not a lack of psychological safety. You might just be fearful of an aversive outcome happening. The other is baggage. So by virtue of previous bosses, previous teams, previous organizations, what it was like to raise up and be you, you might be primed that you don't speak up, or if you do, you're punished. And so that's where you bring baggage or previous experience into a new job, relationship, boss, whatever, and that doesn't necessarily reflect it, but it still impacts it. And there are ways to break that. It just takes consistently showing up in a way that makes people feel that it's safe and worth it to speak up.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's my area of expertise. I love helping people get to the root cause of their speaking fear and clear it away. I feel, I feel like in many environments, it's possible to get to a place where you're not afraid,
Mm-hmm.
but there are some environments that are not as safe. They're just not as safe.
Sure.
So I think there is always that possibility of needing to have the tools available to navigate those situations that are high stakes, that are with people who are unaware, who have different kinds of intentions or different personalities. They're not the readers of the speak up culture. They have a different worldview or belief about how they want to run their business or operate as a manager.
Mm-hmm.
And but what I think that you have, you have to, as you say, you have to make it not just worth it for the person to be willing to speak up, but you're making it worth it for the leader to create the speak up culture.
Oh, fun.
Because, right?
I like it, essentially building the business case for why a speak up culture even matters.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Talk about that.
Well, I mean, if you don't have a speak up culture, meaning people in your organization have ideas, concerns, disagreements, and mistakes, and they don't feel safe or that it's worth it to share them, you're at its most innocuous missing out on opportunities. At its most detrimental, it can cause the failure of the firm or even death, which we've seen in the case of the Boeing 737 MAX or with military or healthcare, right? So yeah, I mean the business case for it is you literally have a more holistic view. This is the value of going to the front line and understanding what's actually happening in your business. So yeah, I mean the business cases, and people feel comfortable sharing what they see, feel, and know to make the firm better.
Hmm. Yeah. I'm so cognizant of the movement these days for diversity and building diversity on teams in order to create different perspectives.
Yeah.
And that does beg the question, though, is the company or the team ready for all those different perspectives?
Yeah. Yes, I mean, oftentimes, I mean, and we see this in Megan Reitz's work. Megan Reitz has been very outspoken on employee activism, which this generation of 20, 30 somethings coming into the world of work right now, they expect their organizations to stand for something and to act in the world in a responsible manner. And so you'll have leaders say, we want to speak up culture. And then employee activist employees will say, great, what's our stance on gender pay gap? What's our stance on abortion rights? What's our stance on gun control and gun reform? Which is like, well, that's not related to work. Well, it affects how I show up to work. So if you really want the most of me, we should have these conversations here. Hey, we just laid off 7% of the workforce. Are we going to have any conversations about that and the fact that the people who are here are grieving? Oh, no, let's just move forward. That's called toxic positivity. So you're totally right. And just because we have DEI hiring practices or DEI promotionary targets or practices doesn't mean that the people who are getting into those roles actually feel that it's safe and worth it to speak up and share their points of view. If we plant a plant in its wrong soil and then don't tend to it in the right way, and then it shrivels and dies or whatever, are we really surprised? No, like we have to put people and we have to create environments in which they can thrive.
Yeah. And what is your take on, let's say, not let's say meetings that are more formalized, but more casual conversations in the workplace, or the role of HR in helping people succeed in the workplace? Like, what do you see as needing to happen, or what do you wish that
Mhm.
everybody who worked in a company knew about psychological safety?
That's a great question. So what I wish everyone knew about psychological safety, which I think the biggest myth of it is it's about being nice. It is not about being nice. Having a speak up culture, of which psychological safety is a fundamental pillar of, we have conversations that are kind, not nice. And kind means that we can disagree. Kind means that we disagree well and that we can come at things from different perspectives and have quality discourse to get to the best possible outcome for all. And I think we need more of that in society, not just in our organizations. I think if we get to a place where we can respect, understand, appreciate, and disagree, then we will make the type of progress that we need politically, across country, in society in general, not just in the home, not just in our organizations.
So, how do you suggest to people to disagree well? What does it sound like?
Question is great. Questions are the hack to curiosity. So as opposed to assuming I know, I think the most powerful thing we can do is ask questions to say, Linda, I'm not sure I understand. Can you share more? Before snapping to judgment. It's good old Michael Bungay, stay curious just a little bit longer. Ask that one more question. Before I dismiss you or shut you up or whatever, um, uh, you know, stay silent, ask a question. If you got to move on, you can say, I don't think I fully understand here. Let's take this offline and actually do, and see if there's something more to learn or to take from it, or to get a pulse of the room to see, is this a conversation worth having now because it's a conversation that needs to happen now, or can it actually be taken offline and then actually do it. And yeah, I think the best gateway to curiosity is genuine open-ended questions, which is great because anyone can do it. You can fake it. Just ask the right question and then zip it and see what happens, and then ask again. You know,
What are the wrong questions?
close-ended questions. Um, uh, yeah, I think if you have an open-ended question, I don't think it can be wrong. I think if you're asking a question because you know you're right and you want to prove to them that you're right, that would be an example of not a great question. Uh,
Mhm.
but if someone's sharing something and you either don't agree or you're not tracking, you can say, "I'm not sure I completely understand. I'm having a trouble with this point. Can you share more?" I just had it with someone on one of my posts in the comments section. They made a nice comment in response, asked if employee incentives help with speak up culture, and I'm like, I'm not sure, but like, what incentives did you have in mind? Like, as opposed to just saying no and shutting someone down, Like, tell me more. We can even do that in the comments of a post. But like anytime you sort of have that like inkling of I may not be understanding the full picture here, or even if you're sure that you do, just ask a question and say, what am I missing? What have we yet to speak about here? Who has an idea that hasn't been shared yet?
Yeah.
And what is it?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
not perfect, but those are a few ideas.
Yeah. For those who may be listening and not watching, Shed is very fond of illustrating what it looks like to just zip your mouth
Yes.
and wait, because
Yeah.
that's an important part of the process, right? Is
Yes.
to ask the question and then hold space for other people to take airtime. One of the things that I'm really aware about in all kinds of community group situations is how some people take up a lot of airtime.
Hmm.
To me, this is really problematic. I'm not one of those people. I usually, I want to see airtime shared. And
Yep.
it bugs me when a lot of people take up a lot of airtime because then I feel like if there is
Mm.
a set limit on the time we have, then it keeps other people out of the picture.
Yep.
So,
How do we combat that? What are some ways
yeah, what are
that,
some of the
yeah,
ways that you do it? I mean, I know, like, in my classes, I use a timer or, I whatever.
yeah.
We or when I when I have groups, I encourage people to be aware of sharing airtime and just leave it on the person. But what do you say?
Yeah, so I mean, volume and quantity doesn't necessarily mean quality. Um, and so, I mean, I was at a meeting last week, and there was one person in particular who dominated and wasn't really aware, I don't think, that they were dominating. And the facilitators could have done an even better job, but they did a good job of. So one of the things that I love doing, especially when I feel comfortable and know people well, is when you have someone who's more introverted or more pensive. Just because they're silent doesn't mean they're not thinking. They're actually probably thinking a lot more. And so one of my favorite things to do, I'm thinking of a close friend of mine, David. And we're in a meeting, and it's the extroverts and the charismatic and the bubbly people that are and then I'll go, hey, we haven't heard from David yet, and I know that David has ideas here because he just does. So please, everyone, just give David. I want to give David like at least 3 or 4 minutes, and if he doesn't feel it, fine. But David, like, what's on your mind? So you have to like literally carve the space for people like you, Linda, or David, who just because they're listening and silent, doesn't mean that they don't have nothing. That doesn't mean that there's nothing for them to contribute. They probably have a lot to contribute. So I think sharing it, and then in a really nice way to say, you know, hey, Tracy, we've heard from you a lot in this meeting. It's been great. And I'm going to ask this question, and please keep it to a minute, just to give a chance for us to hear everyone's voice. That's
Mm,
with respect.
mhm.
That's with respect. And if you're not ready to bottom line it, then maybe go last.
What do you mean bottom line it?
Bottom line meaning to share what you think in a synthesized way,
Mm,
as opposed to going, let me just think out loud and meander, and I'll ask you in 5 minutes where I was and what the question was, and then take 5 more minutes to maybe answer it, as opposed to going like, this is the question. Um, Take a note and like bottom line what you think your answer is. And if they go, well, I want to take this in another direction, it's like, well, wait, we need to hear from everyone else's voices first before we go in another direction. So let's put a pin in that, or maybe for next meeting.
yeah. Yeah. It's kind of, I think I was saying this to Leanne Davy as well. It's kind of like we are asking ourselves to become better facilitators and that we can do that as leaders. But I mean, as leaders, who is the leader? I mean, we can all lead from where we are. Is that
Hmm.
right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, there's leader from front, side, middle, back. Yeah, my colleague Rich Deviney, who wrote the book The Attributes, uses the term dynamic subordination or alpha swapping, which is the person who's in charge is the one, and the word alpha is misused. Alpha should mean leader, but it's misused in our society now. But dynamic subordination means that a team and an organizational chart is more like an amoeba, meaning when there's an issue or an opportunity, it's the person who's closest to the issue or opportunity and the person who's most qualified to step up and lead, which may not be the most senior person. You could have someone who's 25 years old, but they have the perfect knowledge and experiences to lead in that context.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I liked what you were also saying, in the invitation that we can always invite people, and that could, I would say even should, be one of the things that the person who is in the alpha position of a meeting be
Hmm.
cognizant of, and tie that back to what you said earlier about inviting thoughts, but also inviting opposition. Does anyone have
Yes.
a really different opinion about this? What
Yes.
are the other kinds of, like, invitations can there be?
I mean, that's a great one. And then what comes next, you really have to be mindful of and listen. Because if you take any dissent as you're wrong, that's likely the last time you're going to hear dissent. That's a beautiful question of, hey everyone, like we're about to go down this path. This is kind of like speak now, or this seems like a good time for a coffee break, not because we need one, but because we're about to make a decision that it's going to be hard to go back from. So go for coffee and just chitter chatter. And if anything comes up that like we shouldn't go in this direction, we need to hear it right now. We won't label you the problem. We won't make you solve it, but we need to solve it and we need to hear it and unearth it now.
I love that. I love that. I don't think I've heard it stated in that way, the idea of taking a quote unquote "coffee break" to give time and
Hmm.
a little, room,
Breathing. Yeah.
breathing room to and talking room, like the behind the scenes kind of talk that happens in order to see what bubbles up.
Yep.
That feels, like, so mature.
Yeah, I mean, there's that. You can also say, let's go into breakout rooms,
Mhm.
because that's where, as you increase the size of a group, you're decreasing the likelihood that voices will be heard just by
Right,
virtue of many minds.
right.
So creating breakouts or saying, let's take a 30-minute coffee break, even though we don't need 30 minutes nor coffee. It's a strategic break to have and to be totally open with it, to say we're taking a break not because we need one, but we're taking a break because we need to talk about what's going on in just smaller groups,
Mhm.
um, and bring that back.
What do you say to leaders who feel like they know the direction they want? They don't wanna hear the dissent, they want people to follow their what they have decided.
Yeah,
Do
I mean,
like,
yeah,
how
keep
does that
keep
fit
going.
in with this? Because this obviously is time consuming.
This is time consuming. I mean, with everything in our human experience, there's context and there's a time and a place. Um, if you're a captain of an airplane and you see something that's wrong, or you see a place to go, you're allowed you're allowed to make a call, because it's not the time to be like, one of our engines failed. What does everyone think here? Like, that's a time where it's okay to step up and go. And you can ask your co-pilot, what am I missing? What do you see? Um, but yeah, I would say for that leader who's made up their mind, um, that's fine. And you can say, hey, all, we're in a time crunch. This is what I'm thinking, and this is where I want to go. Really quick, does anyone think this is a catastrophic or bad idea? Because if it is, we need to stop right now. But what is it in the Toyota way? Like there was a button on the Toyota manufacturing line that anyone could push if there was a significant safety concern. And so I
Mm,
think even for leaders who have made up their mind, this is the way, I would still invite them to have a big red button that anyone can push and be rewarded and celebrated for. Um, uh, you know, so long as you have a good reason for doing it, even if that reason is right or wrong. So yeah. So and for leaders who've made up their mind and don't want to hear people's voice ideas, you just know that you're diminishing a speak up culture, and there's a time and a place for that. But I would say more often than not, it's really good to hear from your people.
mhm, mhm. Right. Well, I noticed that there were some comments that I had missed while I was listening. I just want to bring them on. That Carol Mahoney said, great point on, is it worth it to speak up? Yes, we want to
Mhm.
feel like it's worth it by hearing that people appreciated it.
Yeah, and then it's made a
Um,
difference.
Elisa Bragg said people want to see the values of the companies we work for nowadays, as you were talking about before. It's not enough to get the paycheck. Yes, they want to know, what do you stand for? What do we stand for here? And that's going to impact how we show up. And then she also said, suggested, "Tell me more" is always a
Yeah.
back pocket phrase of, yeah,
Nice. And
yeah.
Lisa, and hi Lisa, nice to see you, and I'll see you soon. A big piece of values and the strength of a culture are not just how nicely the values look on the wall, but are they behaved?
Yes.
The strength of a culture is the degree to which values are behaved, especially from those who have the most influence in that culture.
Right. Right. Well, lots to think about here. How to
Yeah.
incorporate these ideas into our workplace so that we all feel more valued. Actually, there's one more thing I thought about before we close up shop here
Hmm. Hmm.
is, I want to talk about the reward
Okay.
because I feel like you mentioned a couple
Hmm.
about, like, I really appreciated that you brought that up. We didn't use it. This is why, but keep it coming. Love
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
I also want to emphasize, just as something for people who are listening to think about, to really be specific about what you like and appreciate about what people say. So, like, I love how you're thinking about these stakeholders. It shows me that you're really dedicated to that in your work. Or,
Nice.
um, I love how you described this with a metaphor. It made it so much easier for me to grasp.
Yeah. So there's a my favorite equation and tool for feedback, both positive and constructive. So both appreciation language and then both constructive feedback is FBI, feeling, behavior, impact. So I could say to you, Linda, great job today. And you're like, thanks. Like, don't know what I did to deserve it. Don't know how to repeat that behavior. Or I could say, I feel totally engaged, feeling um, behavior when you've obviously prepared for this and haven't just hit record and go. Brilliant questions. And the impact is, I want to do the best possible job for you and your audience. Thanks. Great job. Right. So when you get to the specifics of, here's how I feel, I'm taking ownership of my feeling, here are the behaviors that made me feel that way, and then the impact of that, which we can use for constructive feedback as well,
Mhm.
which, one liners are fine for jokes, not so good when it comes to giving feedback.
Right.
Saying to someone, you're lazy, that's not going to work well. But if you FBI it, it allows you to own your experience of another and someone to own their behavior and the impact of that behavior as well.
Nice. Love that. Okay. FBI, and very easy to remember.
Yes,
Great.
exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So I think we need to close up here, but where can people find your book? Where can they find you so
Yes.
that they can continue the conversation?
Thank you. Thank you, Linda. Yes. I'm pretty sure for the time being, I'm the only Stephen Shedletsky in the entire in the entire species of human beings. So if you Google my name, you will find me. And for all you handfuls of Shedletskys out there, please be mindful and maybe don't name someone named Stephen. You can learn more about the book, speakupculture.com. And my website is shedinspires.com as well. I'm very active on LinkedIn. So please feel free, just as Linda is, please feel free to connect.
That's great. Well, I so appreciate you coming on. This is such important topic, I believe, for people to feel like the experience they have at work, which is where they spend so much of their time, is one that it feels fruitful and rewarding.
Yes, likewise. And I love the compliment of our work, Linda. It's kind of like you can't have one without the other. So,
Yep.
so good to be in this combo with you.
Yeah, it's great. So thank you everyone for coming on. And if you happen to have some anxiety speaking up, I invite you to check out the preparation rituals that I have. It's a checklist of what you can do before you speak in order to feel more grounded, focused, centered, relaxed, and with intention. So check those out at lindaugalo.com/rituals. And I shall see you on the next live show. Thanks so much for coming on.